Okay, thank you everyone so much for being here today. My name is Ingrid Stegemeller. I am the Industry Engagement Director for Partnership for Learning, which is the education foundation of the Washington Roundtable. The Roundtable is comprised of senior executives of major private sector employers in Washington State, and our members work together to effect positive change on public policy issues that they believe are most important to supporting state economic vitality and fostering opportunity for all Washingtonians. One critical issue for Roundtable members, and I imagine for many of you on the call today, is talent. Roughly 75% of jobs in our state require a credential after high school, such as a degree, certificate, or apprenticeship. Today, only about 40% of our students in Washington are reaching that critical milestone. So in my role, I have both the pleasure and the challenge of catalyzing stronger, more systemic connections between employers and the education system. A big part of my work is helping ensure that employers, like many of you, get high value out of your engagement with young people who will deeply benefit from the experiences that you offer. So today, I'm thrilled to have a powerhouse of a panel together to discuss the how of high-quality internships and student development programs. I think we all generally agree that internships are a positive, but how can employers make the most of them? Today, for our time together, we will have three objectives. The first is to discover different types of ROI that internships can deliver. We're going to talk about how to structure internship programs and student development programs to achieve specific ROI goals. And we're going to talk about resources and partners that can help. I'm going to start out giving some framing to these objectives. Then I will introduce our amazing panelists, and we will get going into their insights and lessons learned. So to contextualize our panel discussion today, I want to offer two slides that can help us think through the types of ROI that internships can provide, and also some internship structures to achieve those different kinds of ROI. So first, the different types of ROI that internship programs can provide. You'll see three categories up on the screen. The first category is around business and operational value. So direct work products that interns can provide, new skills and ideas that young people can bring into a workplace, and a connection to a younger and often harder to reach audience. The second category of ROI is around talent development and pipeline. So internships and student development programs can help businesses get to know potential new hires, can help connect businesses with different potential candidate pools to diversify workforce, and can offer development opportunities for existing staff through managing and mentoring opportunities. The third category of ROI is around brand and community visibility. So participating in internship and student development programs can help raise visibility within a sector that might be less well known among young people. And these programs can also help enhance relationships and reputation within schools and within a community. So with those types of ROI in mind, let's talk about a snapshot of different internship formats depending on a business's desired ROI and internal capacity. So a note that these models are not mutually exclusive. You can mix and match depending on your business needs, and you're going to hear a lot of examples of this from our panelists. Starting at the top are kind of lower lift, more time-bound, more discrete opportunities. As we move down the slide, we get into a little bit more layered, deeper, complex student development opportunities. So running through these quickly, at the top, we start with externships or job shadowing. These are sort of short-term observational experiences that help students understand workplace culture. Case competitions are sort of short-term, team-based challenges that can help solve real business problems and yield some fresh ideas. Flexible internships are meant to be able to accommodate kind of diverse worker needs, diverse student needs, expand access to these types of programs. Project-based internships can give interns defined projects with clear deliverables that offer that hands-on experience, but can also give tangible products to employers. Rotational internships can give young people visibility across the functions of an organization and can help employers assess fit and strengths. Cohort-based student development can help with some supervisory efficiency and keeping students in groups, and can also foster a sense of belonging among young people. And then we have kind of our most intense models at the bottom, the curriculum-aligned internship, where students are applying classroom learning directly in their work experience. So these types of programs are very aligned with the education system. And similarly, apprenticeship-style internships provide a really structured skill-building plan with mentorship that are closely aligned to a business's long-term hiring goal. So one final note on these internship models that are designed in collaboration with schools or workforce boards or nonprofits can help intentionally source diverse candidates and can help align with academic and credential pathways. And you'll hear some examples of that from our panelists. I know this is a lot of information and our panelists will help bring it to life. I wanted to offer just a couple of examples of how these structures might look in practice. So for instance, an employer that's looking to primarily raise visibility of their sector and their brand in their community might want to start by offering opportunities for job shadows or case competitions, like these lower lift programming opportunities that open students' eyes to a business or a sector. While an employer who's more concerned about a longer-term talent pipeline for critical roles might be more interested in offering a cohort-based or an apprenticeship-style internship. All right, with that context and shared understanding, let's dive into our panelist introductions. So we have 3 organizations represented today across multiple sectors and business sizes. We have Fred Hutch Cancer Center, Wagstaff, and Boeing. So let me start with Team Hutch. Dr. Jeannie Chowning is the Associate Vice President of Science Education at Fred Hutch, which has been a preeminent leader in cancer care and disease research for 50 years. She brings multifaceted experience across academic and nonprofit sectors, including time as a science teacher. She holds a PhD in learning sciences from the University of Washington and has devoted her career to improving science education. We also have Dr. Mary Grace Katasime, who's a program manager for career exploration and workforce development, overseeing the Hutch Advance Initiative, which is a cross-divisional effort housing 5 programs designed to expose high schools and undergraduate students to careers within the biomedical sciences where there are broad workforce gaps. She earned her PhD in medical virology from Stellenbosch University, and her passion for empowering the next generation of young scientists led her into the field of science education and outreach. Thank you both so much for being here. Next, we have Dr. Wade Larson, who until a couple of months ago was the Director of Workforce for Wagstaff Incorporated, which is a Spokane-based manufacturer that provides machinery, technology, and service to enable aluminum producers to transform molten aluminum into solid shapes. Wade now works as the director of the Production and Manufacturing Institute and principal at Partners in Manufacturing. He works with Wagstaff and many of the other manufacturers in the area to advance their workforce development efforts. Thank you, Wade, for being here. And finally, we have Team Boeing. Justin McCaffrey is the Outreach, Communications, and Marketing Lead for the Boeing Workforce Development Team. Since joining Boeing in 2019, Justin has worked to build awareness and excitement around manufacturing skill development, internship, and career opportunities through targeted messaging and materials, multimedia storytelling, and in-person outreach. Prior to Boeing, Justin developed and implemented public engagement strategies for a wide range of local, regional, and state agencies and organizations. And then we have Holly Miles, who's the pipeline operations lead for the Boeing Workforce Development Team. Since joining Boeing in 2019, Holly has led projects to scale and simplify pathways from manufacturing education into Boeing, including leading the national coordination of manufacturing summer student development programs for Boeing commercial airplanes. Prior to Boeing, Holly held roles in recruitment, operations, and technology, both in-house and as a consultant across the world. All right, amazing panel. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's dive into the substance of our conversation today. So my first question for all of you is, given the many types of ROI that a business can gain from an internship or a student development program, what business needs were you all trying to solve with your internship and student development programs? And Wade, let's start with you from the small business perspective.
Sure. Ours goes back a few years. So in about 2018, I mean, we all recognized that the workforce issue was happening, um, and so we're looking for ways to feed the pipeline, if you will, early on. We took a look at a couple other programs that were out there, and so we formed what we now call the Production and Manufacturing Institute. So at first we thought, can we Wagstaff this thing, right? Can we create this solution ourselves? And then we realized it's too big of a problem or a challenge. Reached out to a handful of other manufacturers, said, let's get on board with this, use a co-opetition approach to this. It's all of our problems. We're hiring each other's employees, and at the same, we all need this. So at that point, we got together our this institute for. We started with high school juniors and seniors to bring them in for a. At that point, it was a 4 week. Then we brought it down to 3 weeks, but it's really an immersive experience for them to come in and experience what manufacturing is all about. So those kids who already know what they want to do and they're well trained and well suited, they're great. And the ones who don't want it, aren't ready for that, that's fine. We're looking for the kids in the middle, and this has been a great opportunity to expose them to manufacturing and the trades and to create some interest.
Thanks so much, Wade.
Mhm.
I next am curious if we could turn to the Boeing team. Could you briefly describe the Core Plus Aerospace curriculum and the student development program and share why you launched these programs from a business perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Ingrid. I can talk a little bit about Core Plus Aerospace, and then I'll hand it to my colleague Holly Miles to talk more about our student development programs. But similar to what Wade had mentioned, 10 to 15 years ago, with some very clear workforce challenges on the horizon, Boeing developed Core Plus Aerospace. Core Plus Aerospace is a foundational hands-on manufacturing curriculum that is based upon our new hire training process for manufacturing employees and utilizes many of the same skills that our new manufacturing hires use on the shop floor. So Core Plus Aerospace, that 2-year curriculum, it is typically taught at comprehensive high schools in the junior and senior years. And that's in a 180-hour model. It's also offered at vocational skills centers in a 540-hour model. So students go to the skills center that's associated with their school district for about half the day to learn those hands-on skills. And really the idea is to teach some of those hands-on skills while in high school. So as students approach graduation, they have a really wide variety of opportunities available to them. Holly?
Thanks, Justin. And so at Boeing, with the scale of the hiring that we do in entry level manufacturing, we're really looking to hire from the whole ecosystem and touch as many of those kind of shop classes as possible. Obviously, we can't bring all of them on site in order to build their skills and get that industry exposure, unfortunately. But we do have our summer student development programs. And these are an opportunity to bring some of those students on site, continue to build their skills, and then have them go back out into their classrooms. We really target the summer after their junior year, so they still have another year in their classrooms that they can share what they learned with their instructors, with their peers, and ultimately then that keeps the entire ecosystem healthy. It also ensures we have something to offer our community, even in years where Boeing might not be hiring. We still, in fact, we actually dial up in the summer in the years where we might not have as many jobs available, because we want to make sure we can bring some of those seniors on if we don't have jobs for them to walk into out of school. So that's been the ROI we're looking for.
Thank you both. Team Hutch, let's turn to you on this one. So you have a
Yeah.
suite of workforce development programs called Hutch Advance.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear about that, and then focus in on your program for students in high school and just beyond called Lab Launch. What's the business value for you in starting that young?
Yeah. So we actually have a whole suite of programs. Our science education has been working for over 30 years with the education community to cultivate the next generation of scientists and clinicians and other STEM professionals. And we do have this initiative that's come up in the last few years to really focus in on workforce programs. And as you mentioned, it's called Hutch Advance. We have two programs in Hutch Advanced for high school students. One is a career awareness focused program that exposes students to a wide variety of jobs at a cancer center that don't necessarily require, for example, a graduate degree or maybe even an undergraduate degree, but that are critical in serving our mission. Another is a pathway program into entry-level lab technician roles, and that's the one we'll be mostly talking about today, called Lab Launch. And we realized we had workforce gaps in critical, technical, like middle skill level roles. We found that there's a lot of value in starting early with these awareness programs and then providing structured opportunities for students to dive in deeper. And so that those two pieces make a nice pair, right? Like there's awareness programs and then the ability to dive in if you decide you're interested further. And so students really start exploring careers in middle and high school. And having been a former high school teacher as well, I know from that side, you know, they don't know what they don't know to a certain extent. So we want to broaden the range of possibilities, but also make it so that students who identify career interests early on have the ability to, you know, pursue educational opportunities that are relevant to them. And that sets a strong foundation for future success. So there are a lot of different alternative routes into different careers that students don't know about. And a lot of students may not want to go into traditional pathways that we've had available at Fred Hutch for a long time. That's a PhD route into, you know, eventually running a lab themselves or becoming a doctor. Or maybe a student has a need to earn and learn at the same time. So they're making plans, but they need to be working while they're pursuing a four-year degree or higher. So we identified duties that someone can do in a research lab without a four-year degree. And so we can increase our productivity and identify young talent at the same time by designing these kinds of programs where students gain skills, but also build a network and foster a sense of belonging and identification with our organization, so they have some loyalty to us too. And so we actually find that we have a lot of students who continue on, and Mary Grace will speak to that when she talks a little bit later about the specifics of Lab Launch.
That's great, Jeannie. Thank you so much. That's a perfect segue into our next question too, which is, so each of you have these talent needs that you're working to solve through engaging with young people. And each of you have structured your programs very differently. So I'm curious if you could talk about how you decided on the structure of your internship or student development programs to meet the business needs that you just shared. I'm going to put up a quick slide that describes each of these programs for our audience. And while I do that, Team Hutch, I'd love to go back to you and just hear a little bit about how you settled on that structure of a 6-week kind of full-time internship for the Lab Launch program. So if you could describe that model, including its connection to academic coursework, that would be great.
Yes, happy to do that, and a great segue from Jeannie. So our Lab Launch program is an accelerated lab certificate program in partnership with Shoreline Community College. This is essentially a 2-year pathway into an entry-level lab technician role within Fred Hutch. And so a student enters this pathway in their 12th grade year by enrolling in Shoreline's biomanufacturing running start program, taking that coursework over that academic year, and then upon completing that running start course, they become eligible for phase 2 of the program, which is a paid in-person 6-week summer internship at a lab within the Hutch. And so this phase 2 of the program, we actually eventually opened it up to other partnering colleges which have similar programs. So it's a bit of a wider cohort at phase 2. And these interns come in and are paired. A wide range of different labs are hosting these interns over the summer. After finishing phase 2 of the program, the interns who are in the Shoreline pathway then go back to complete a full year of academic coursework, which then earns them this lab launch certificate. And what that certificate is, it guarantees them an interview for a lab tech role here at the Hutch. And so the selection of this model was really driven by the needs of lab managers across the center. There was this felt need, this gap in entry-level roles. And so that informed the model that we took. And in planning, we brought together lab directors, hiring managers from within the Hutch, with instructors and faculty members at Shoreline Community College, to discuss aligning hiring needs with the curriculum. And this was a really key point in developing our program. We had an in-person meeting at Shoreline Community College, so in the academic environment. And it was really powerful for the instructors at Shoreline to hear directly from hiring managers about the skills and the competencies that they actually look for when they want to fill their roles. And so these two groups were able to co-select focus areas for the certificate curriculum. And what we've ended up with is a very well-designed 2-year program where the work-based learning and the academic training complements each other and is quite synergistic. And so, yeah, that was how Lab Launch was designed.
Thank you, Mary Grace. Wade, let's move to you next to talk a little bit about the why behind the structure of this 3-week intensive institute.
Well, I mean, the why was the desperate outlook for the workforce, but at the same time, we wanted to do something that really created the interest. What we recognized in the schools is that, well, there are some shop programs and such that really the opportunity to even be exposed to manufacturing the trades is diminished substantially. So we were jumping in to say, hey, is there a way for us to give them an idea of what we do in manufacturing? That could be not just from production, welding, machining, the production side, but also all the other parts, engineering, design, administration. We really wanted to let them know there's something different to that. So that's where we structured these 3 weeks. And again, at the start, we had no idea what we're doing. So you never do. But now that we've got 6 years under our belt, we've got a pretty good franchisable model. But where we were going is how can we get enough intensive training to get their hands on these tools and do something focused. What we know is that high school kids already know everything. Just ask them. And so if we're to send them in a school format to try and teach them, they're not going to pay attention. We give them enough description and explanation to say, be safe, keep your fingers and toes, and go do some stuff. And so we organize them into cohorts into different locations. We have the main location at East Valley High School, and then other locations come on as remote locations. The kids are organized into teams of 4, and each team is a product, is in charge of a product. But they design, manufacture, and sell these products. And what we're trying to do in that first week is to say, all right, here's some intro. Here's a crash course. We cover safety, hand tools, design, power tools, everything, all the way through prototyping. So when they get into week 2, it's full production. But we also interlace that with visits from executives and professionals. We have tours weekly where they're going out on field trips to different locations to see it done. And in the end, right, they get a full spectrum of this. But really, our goal was to create interest so that if they say, yeah, this is for me, then here's what your next step is. For high school classes to enroll, for college programs, here are the careers that are available. And if it's not for you, awesome. Go figure out what your passion is and go do it. But now you tried it out. But that was really it. It's not to make them production ready, but in the end, they do get skills. But really, the feedback we get regularly is the most skills they really get: communication, problem solving, teamwork, leadership. That's where the real benefit comes in. So we'll talk more about it later. But really, it's proven to be a right model to get the kids just running, hitting the ground running with it.
Thanks for describing that, Wade. Let's move over to the Boeing team to talk a little bit about the structure of the summer student development experience and how you chose that structure.
Thanks. So our program is cohort-based and primarily instructor-led. So we have 2 cohorts at each of our main production sites, Everett, Renton, and Auburn, also in South Carolina. And then we have some specialized programs as well in tooling, functional test, machining in Montana. And we really design the programs around what gaps, if any, there are between what students could be getting in the classroom and what we want to show them kind of once they come on site. So the curriculum is designed to kind of build on top of what they're already getting. We have some constraints at Boeing. I think everyone has different constraints. Some of ours are just that they're not allowed to actually do any work. So that using that training model worked best and also allowed us to kind of operate at scale in terms of, we can have a cohort of, 20 students and have, a couple of instructors to work with them. One thing that we do that works well for us is to have at least the high school program is split into two groups. We have a group A and group B at every site. Group A goes through the mechanical skills training, while group B does kind of all of the wraparound stuff, quality and their wire installation, BP, problem solving, some of the employability skills, and then they swap. And then the other group goes through mechanical skills. So that works well for us. We also started out just offering this program to our Core Plus Aerospace students. So those who were enrolled in those programs, we have Core Plus Aerospaces in about 55 different high schools in Washington State. But about 3 years ago, we actually expanded that and realized that this was an opportunity to get to know the skills of students from other schools as well. And we also, our team as a whole now works largely because of the talent we saw come into the summer program. Our whole team now supports and works with a wide variety of shop classes, not just Core Plus Aerospace. So that worked really well for us in the end.
Thanks, Holly. So this is great context for thinking about your workforce needs and how you've structured programs to meet these particular needs within your companies and your sectors. I want to just take a minute to note we've got some great questions coming in through the Q&A box. If you do have questions for our panelists, feel free to put them in the box and we will work through as many as we can toward the end of the webinar. So next question, I hear a lot from employers that I talk with about, it's a lot of work to put these programs together, especially at the beginning. How do you manage those upfront costs? How do you staff these efforts internally? And how did you get the buy-in that you needed from both leadership and frontline managers? So let's go to Team Hutch first on this one.
Yeah, I think this is a great question because these are two essential things. Like if you do not have enough staff support, it's very difficult to get this kind of program done. It's easy to come up with ideas and the actualization. You want to make sure that you have enough investment in staff. And so we have a designated program manager, Mary Grace Katusime, who came on and then the role kind of evolved with her as she grew at Fred Hutch. But we were originally funded with the Washington Alliance for Better Schools. They received program builder funds from Career Connect Washington. And built into that system was a requirement that we get commitment from our president, from leadership. And so we did that. And that allowed us in the subsequent budget years to say, hey, our leadership has approved this, and so we're going to keep going. So we had 3 years planned. And then that's enough time to make it real for people. So once we started to have a real program with real success, people were able to see what the value was. But we just needed that little kickstart in order to, bring everyone along. Even though the grant didn't cover staffing, it got us the leadership commitment. It was just a planning grant. So we've also been to the Hutch Executive Leadership Team meeting twice, once at the very beginning and more recently to give an update and talk about some new programs. So that has helped us get momentum. And we've also tried to keep our key leaders informed across Fred Hutch. And it's turned out that this is actually extremely exciting for people in all different kinds of workforce areas they want to, build programs for. We've also co-created this program with frontline managers. So we have buy-in at that level as we've included them in every step of the way. So they have a vested interest in the success of the program as well. And they themselves have hired interns from the program. And so they continue to be advocates for the program because of that. Yeah, so those are, I think, some of the ways that we've been trying to, build this capacity internally, and also the awareness.
Yeah, thanks for those specific suggestions, Jeannie. Appreciate that. Wade, let's move to you. What about how you all handle the kind of upfront costs of buy-in?
Yeah, no, great question. So, pitching the idea, once we had it going, wasn't too far off, right? It was a great idea on paper. It is. In manufacturing, we knew back then what the outlook looked like. More people retiring than coming in, and it wasn't going to get any better. We'd seen those projections for years. So getting that initial buy-in was great. But in terms of the funding, I said, all right, look, this could be an expensive program, and I'm going to go out to ask other manufacturers too. How we designed it is effectively, before we turned it into a nonprofit this fall, it was an event. It wasn't a thing. It was a business run event where we partnered with schools, with educators, and that way it could be a business run activity running with business rules, but I incorporate the teachers and the locations for a couple of different reasons. But by doing it that way, we had control over the curriculum, we have control over the direction, and we can really drive it. And we could fire the kids. I mean, seriously, it's a real environment. And, if it's a school program, it gets a little more complicated. Business program, we'll coach them, we'll guide them. But at the end of the day, if I have to fire them, we do to let them go. But gaining the support was fine. The initial ask, I threw out a bold number and they said yes. And it's like, no kidding. And kind of ran with that. But what I didn't know was that this is going to end up being eventually about a 6-figure event every single year. That's where I went to the business community, and really the manufacturer said, hey, here's what I've got. Want you in on this? And there was no hesitation. I wouldn't say it was like super easy, but there wasn't any hesitation. So we, got the funding from the manufacturers. But in terms of staffing, it was me who was there internally driving it. But I tap into support at the school level. We'd ask for each school who was participating to have one of their CTE instructors there as the core instructor. And so that does a couple of things. Number one, gives us the expertise on teaching how to build these products. But number two, it also gives us the CTE coverage so we can have them use the tools. And that's hypercritical. We don't want to just talk about it. We want them to experience it. From there, I reach out to the sponsors and say, hey, I need some folks. And so we'd ask for engineers to help teach design. We brought in welders for welding day, just, putting welders in their hands. We brought in machinists for machining day. The executives came in to have conversations. We asked for some mentors along the way. And that's where a lot of the staffing comes in. So it's a lot of moving parts. But, talk about guiding the whole program. Those upfront costs, we had no idea what we were expecting. And that's also where if we could use the schools, then they should have the tools. But on occasion, we'd find a school that didn't have it. This is where we got into, and what we didn't realize at the start was we'd have upfront costs for every single year for something new. So last year, for example, this program's been wildly successful for high school. We said, let's go to middle school. Ran that program. Local college said, hey, we have it, but we have the space, but not a shop. And so we bought a mobile shop. We just rolled in the tools, and we had the teacher had a 1-week experience for the middle schoolers, which became wildly successful. But each one of those costs, as the momentum grew, it also created other momentum throughout the community. And it wasn't a big ask when I say, hey, I need some more money from all the sponsors together.
Thank you, Wade. I'm hearing from both of you a little bit of a snowball effect happening, which is great. Team Boeing, how about you and managing kind of the upfront challenges and costs of getting these programs going?
I would agree with that snowball concept. I think once you get started with something small, you get a lot of excitement going, and it does become so much easier to continue to ask for that sustainment funds. We're so lucky to have a team that does workforce development for that wider ecosystem, and kind of funding for that. Specifically for the summer program, especially because our program is paid. We pay the students, and it's pretty large scale. We have about 200 a year. So we do have to, we go to the business and ask for funding every year. It's actually a process we're in right now. And the most important thing there is to make sure that leaders at every level have a lot of visibility of the students through the summer. We actually, they wear safety vests that say manufacturing student on the back. We invite as many leaders as we can to classes, report outs, activities, and just make sure there's a lot of visibility so that they understand when we do come around the corner in the fall and start asking for, hey, we want to do this again, that they have that memory, and they start to see, okay, what's that going to look like for our hiring several years down the road. In terms of like staffing, though, I think I can relate to so many people on the call that whoever's coordinating, that's such a small piece of it, right? We end up leaning on about 150 people across the business in different types of project management, and then all of their teams support in different volunteer opportunities. So it is really hard to coordinate kind of everybody going the right direction and figuring out how to make sure everybody's trained and kind of the right way to interact with minors in a manufacturing facility, for example, and how to handle different issues. You're not always in the room. So that's a big lift for the business as well.
And just to add on to what Holly was saying, as Holly shared, it's a very substantial lift to bring in 200 students on site in Auburn, Everett, and Renton every single year. And so to maintain that momentum and that excitement, we need people to be able to see the product of that investment and to stay excited about it. So we view our student development programs as really, really critical opportunities to gather and collect content that we can use throughout the year. So when we bring those folks on site, we already have a plan for how we're going to capture content, the types of stories that we want to be able to tell. Maybe there's a student participating for the very first time from a specific school that's having some enrollment challenges. So we might have a plan for how we can highlight that school's engagement on social media. So we try to be very intentional about providing opportunities for our leaders and for the community to see these students in action.
That's great. Thank you both so much. Lots of helpful tips from all of you. The next question is another hurdle that I'd like to dig into, which is compensating students. So it can be hard for an employer to do that, and it does increase students' ability to participate. And so each of you have tackled this in a different way as well. So I'd love to hear each of you talk about how you've set up your compensation structure for young people and why. So Team Boeing, we're going to go back to you first on this one.
Sure. So our program is paid. It's not paid a lot. It's paid minimum wage for, the assigned site that the student might be at. And we employ the students through contract labor. So there's a third party that's the employer of record for those students. And we work really closely with them on any sort of issues that might come up. And, that kind of it's a good structure for us as far as managing participants in the program as well. I think it's important for us that the students see that we value their time, that we're paying them for that time, that this is an investment we're making in their future. And so, that's something that's, we've been able to do. I know that we're fortunate to be able to do that way. And it also means that, like you talk about those requests that we go through every year, it means that the business is making a commitment to the students. And it's not something, sometimes we get requests from managers. They're like, hey, we have this like specific skill. We'd like to run a summer program too. And I think having that barrier of it's a paid program, we have to go to executives and get budget, means that there's not, the people are taking this seriously when they're deciding to move forward with a program like this, because it is a big investment.
Thank you, Holly. Let's go to the Hutch team next on this. Could you talk about your compensation?
Yeah, we have kind of a maybe unique situation because we have so many different cohort programs, 17 programs total. And so we have arrangements with our HR, and that would be my kind of advice, like really talk to the folks in your HR department to make sure you get on the same page early. They're also usually excited about these kind of programs because it helps with their own jobs to bring in people who know what the work environment is like. But in our case, often that's also coordinating with other folks like environmental health and safety. Minors are a whole thing, you know. And so we set them up as non-employees, and they get a participant award. So they're not getting hourly per se, but similar to what Holly said, you know, I think it's very important to try to pay students a minimum wage at the minimum, right? And more if you can, not only to send the message, but also because a lot of students would have to be doing other kinds of things instead. And this way, you know, you can have more students participating. And so for us, it's a participant award where we say, you know, you're going to be with us for this amount of time. These are the expectations we have, and this is the amount that you'll receive, and it translates out time-wise to, you know, minimum wage at least. So that's kind of how we deal with it.
Creative solution. Thank you, Jeannie. Wade, I'd love to hear from you on this one too. Compensation for students.
Yeah, we've learned and adjusted along the way. So initially we were giving out stipends, and the amount of the stipend we're trying to add up the hours that they're in, you know, working in the program and compete with minimum wage. But I mean, minimum wage is kind of accelerated, and that was not sustainable. At the same time, we also knew that we were pushing the envelope on whether they're employees or not, and we had to back off after a couple of years at that level. And that's okay. We're like, all right, is that going to kill the program? Because we did learn that students are like employees. They like to learn, you know, earn and learn. They don't want to do anything for free, especially high school juniors and seniors. So we had to have something to compete. What we did was we knew that while it was expensive, we still shifted it down so the stipends were under the employment mark. So there's still a stipend there. But then we took the other money for the incentives and shifted it over to a points-based incentive program, kind of a Chuck E. Cheese on steroids kind of a deal. As they met their objectives, as they performed well, as they did different things, the teams accelerated. They earned points, and the points could be turned in for things like computers, 3D printers, tools, that kind of business. So they'd have the stipend and that. So we created a multi-tier incentive structure. But what that did for us is, makes it a little bit more affordable. It costs us a little bit less than what we were doing before. But also the other thing with the shift, at first we're like, can we do this? Should we do this? And then we had to be reminded, this costs the students nothing. Up to this point, we've not charged for this program. And they can enroll and do this. And so free money. Still can't get them all to come in, but still that's part of the structure. So looking ahead, as we've expanded to middle school and as we light up grade school this next year to get a step lower for that introduction, we're going to have to spread the money a little bit bigger or a little bit longer and farther. And I'm going to have to go get more supporters, more sponsors, of course. But from a compensation perspective, this past year, I heard no complaints. Last year, when we first implemented it, where they knew they had larger stipends, now they had smaller stipends, there's a little bit of whining. But this year, no, it was fine. They'll meet the expectations that you set. And then moving forward, to add the value proposition, we're adding CTE credit, high school credit. So they'll earn a half a CTE credit on this through that. And we haven't had that up to this point.
Great. Thank you so much, Wade. Could you elaborate if in case anyone on the call doesn't know what CTE is, would you give a couple of sentences about that?
Yes, definitely. Career technical education. So that's your shop classes, your career-oriented courses. The students are required to have a certain number of credits for high school graduation under traditional programs, and so this helps us get there. It does add, from one end, it adds to a little bit of expense, but because of the value, it's taken care of on the education side. But on the employer side, this just adds more value. We love to get things without having to pay for it, especially in manufacturing. But you can't earn money. You can't earn interest on money that's not in the bank. And so this becomes a smart investment for them to get in front of these kids and pre-recruit early on. So
great. Thank you. I know the Boeing team is expert in the CTE world too with the Core Plus Aerospace curriculum. So as we're moving forward, feel free to add on anything you'd like to say about working with CTE. We've got a couple of lightning round questions, and then we're going to take a few questions from our audience. So our first lightning round question, and Wade, we're going to start with you on this one, is just around one way you know that your investment in this program is delivering ROI.
So this one's, any of these are tough to have a direct ROI. And that's the feedback I get from a lot of folks like, how do I know it's working? Well, you got to go with some indicators. They're not quantitative, they're going to be qualitative. And so this general momentum that we've seen over the past 6, 7 years, we've created an informal working network among manufacturers in the area that we didn't have before. And that's been critical for us to move everything forward. Now, that said, what are some of the key indicators? We are expanding. We have more schools saying, hey, can we do this thing? So there's that big increase in demand. But these students, they're old enough now that we've seen it for the last several years. A lot of these employers are hiring the kids. I know at Wagstaff we've hired 2 along the way. McKay's picked up some. Kaiser has picked up one. We've picked up a number of kids. So if we have a little bit of trouble getting feedback from the kids because they just don't respond. But from what we can tell, all indications are strong ROI, and we're pressing forward to grow it.
Thank you. Team Hutch, how do you know your investment is working?
Yeah, well, because ours is a pathway program, we are able to see really direct indicators. And a big one for us is our student outcomes. So I'll start with an example of Tenchi Vu. Tenchi was part of our first high school cohort in 2023 for the Lab Launch program. He was a senior in Shorecrest High School and also pursued the biomanufacturing running start program at Shoreline. He interned in an immunology lab here at the Hutch that eventually hired him. And Tenchi is now part of the Hutch and continues to pursue his bachelor's in biochemistry at the University of Washington. And so since launching in 2023, we have now completed a full 2-year cycle of our program. And each cycle gives us a cohort of about 11 participants. And to date, we have 7 hired and have joined our workforce. So almost an entire cohort has been hired. And so those are really direct indicators that we're getting a return.
And Tenchi's also helping with the newer students now too, which is also great as an alum to be able to speak to that experience.
Great. Very direct indicator. Thank you. Team Boeing.
Well, I think in addition to just direct hiring out of our student development programs, which happens, pretty regularly at the end of each summer, something that I'm always really excited to see is when in one year we have maybe one student from a school that had never participated before in the student development program. We have one student participate. That student goes back, tells their classmates, tells their instructor about their experience, what they learned, what they gained. And then the following year, when we open up applications, seeing numerous students from that school apply for that next year's program. It's always just exciting to see that students are going out, kind of serving as ambassadors and helping spread the word and spread excitement. One school that comes to mind is Spokane Valley Tech. Back in 2019, I think we had a couple of interns from Spokane Valley Tech. They went back that next school year, talked to their teacher, got him very excited about the program. And I think the following year, we had at least 6 to 8 students from Spokane Valley Tech coming over to Western Washington for the summer. So it's always exciting to see participation grow from select schools.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin. All right, one more lightning round question was just around advice. If you could offer one piece of advice to employers or partners considering starting a program, what would that be? So Team Hutch, we'll start with you.
Yes. So our advice probably will touch on one of our questions that came in the chat box, but it's really about getting the best ROI out of your interns. So setting them up for success. Because us, like many of the panelists here, begin with high school students, we know that for many, if not all of them, this will be their first time in a professional work environment. And so there is work to be done as far as aligning expectations for the interns, but also for the mentors as well, many of whom have not worked with high school students either in a long time or really at all. And the goal is to help students frame for themselves what this internship is, which for many is an informal interview. The people that are hosting them in their labs are people that do want to hire. And that is the reason why they're participating in the program. And so how we help students frame this opportunity is through an intensive 2-day orientation with myself, the program manager, before they even begin interning in their labs, where we really teach them what professionalism is and looks like, what the culture of our organization is, what our values are, communication, team building, how to manage feedback and conflict and troubleshooting, what to do when you make a mistake. They get to speak with near peer mentors, so people who are slightly above their level, and to learn about the lab technician experience within our center. And what we're seeing is when we continue to support them throughout the 6 weeks, and we have weekly touch points where they come and continue this professional development, they're able to implement what they're learning in real time, and the mentors are able to see them develop as young professionals in the workplace. And for many students, when we provide them this support, they rise to the occasion. And so we are seeing that when students are well supported and prepared for the experience, you really get the best ROI for the employer and also for the intern as well.
Thanks, Mary Grace. Wade, let's go to you next on this one. A piece of advice.
Yeah, first thing is don't try to boil the ocean, especially not doing this at the first, because business does not talk education and education does not talk business. They both need to learn how to translate and what the code is, and that's going to take some time. So that means, number one, don't make it up yourself. There are plenty of programs out there that are working you can jump on board with, be a part of, or just learn from them. But do not reinvent the wheel on this. At the same time, you can start small and grow from there. So pick one school to adopt, just one. Go learn the system, go learn what CTE is and everything else. Make new friends, and from there it will spread and get it easier to get into the door of the other schools around and the other programs.
Perfect. Thank you, Team Boeing.
Yeah, a couple things. First is just, be really intentional about what you want to get out of a program like this. Spend some time discussing internally within your organization your specific goals and objectives for a program like this, what you want your business to get out of it, but also what value you're providing to the participants, to the community. And then based upon that conversation, those discussions, identify an approach that works best for you. Don't, as Wade said, don't feel like you need to boil the ocean. Take a bite-size approach. Small is fine, especially just to get started. Maybe you just host a few students for some sort of job shadow program. Maybe it's a very small program to start, but don't feel like you have to go, 100 students over a summer. Take a bite-size approach to it that meets your needs.
Perfect. Great advice from all. Thank you so much. We have a few minutes left to take some questions from the audience. So thank you for submitting those. I've got a question just about managing working with minors. This is a big topic that I've got a resource to share on this at the end. But I think, Wade, if you could just talk a little bit about how you in your program have managed kind of that hiring, working with minors, that'd be great.
From an HR perspective, right, the first thing that people are going to say, especially in manufacturing, is we can't hire minors, we can't use minors. And that's not correct. That's not true. You can use them, just have the guidelines to follow. And any kind of work-based learning program has those criteria, the guidelines, and you can do that. Now, House Bill 1644 threw a wrench in there in terms of the intensity of the guidelines. It didn't change the rules. It just changed the outcomes to make sure that we're all walking the line. But that didn't change anything. Now, that said, the beauty about creating something like the Institute is it's not the workplace. We can create a simulated workplace, and that gets us a lot of traction, and we can do a lot of things and have the kids do a lot of things under the CTE umbrella. That's great. And you can work with any school to create something like that. But getting them in, the first step is to do it. Feel your way through. Just, there are ways to do it. Just got to follow the rules, and your work-based learning guide can help you out.
Great. Thanks for that, Wade. We have another kind of category of questions just around student recruitment and how you actually find the students to participate in these programs. This is open to any of you who want to kind of jump in on how you think about recruiting students.
I can kick that off. For Boeing, fall is what we call our Excite season. So pretty much from October into December, everyone on our team is going around to high school career fairs We are presenting to shop classes, and a big focus area for our conversations with students and instructors is sharing information about our next summer's student development program. We're currently accepting applications for that program, so we're making sure that students understand that the skills that they're learning in class are applicable and can help them succeed in that program, and then letting them know how they can apply. So it is a very busy time of the year for us.
Okay, Wade, do you want to close us out with your answer on that one?
Sure. My relationships with the CTE directors, the CTE teachers at that level, that's what makes this whole thing work. Connecting with the counselors, it's at the individual level. So ours is primarily word of mouth. We do social media, we do some advertising on that, but really, and to Justin's point, getting into the classroom to be present so they know what you're talking about is phenomenal. But this can't be done at a 30,000-foot level. It has to be direct. It has to be pointed. It has to be relationship based. And that's what's going to create the trust, the momentum, and your feedback so that the previous attendees say, that's cool, you need to go.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. The hour went by quickly. There's a handful of unanswered questions, so I will do my best to tackle those after the webinar. So stay tuned, folks who asked questions that didn't get answered. I did record this webinar, so we'll be posting it online, and you all will get a link to it if you want to share it with others. I will wrap us up here by, first of all, just saying a huge thank you to our panelists today for sharing your expertise and experiences. One of you said, don't reinvent the wheel. And you all right here are just a wealth of knowledge for your peers to turn to in thinking about how to set up high value programs to meet kind of these early talent needs. So huge thank you for your time and expertise today. I also have to give a quick shout out to my colleague Ashley Carter with Pathfinder Strategies for all of the expertise and wisdom that she contributed to the structure and content of this webinar. So thank you, Ashley. A couple of takeaways for me. Again, don't feel like you have to start from scratch. Look to your peers. There's great programs happening, and I think there's a lot to learn from each other as we all think through this business education kind of connection that can be so hard to make. And finally, take a first step. Start small, start somewhere. It won't be perfect the first time, and it can build over time. So I really hope these conversations can continue. I quickly want to share a couple of resources for folks to consider as you absorb all of the learnings from today. This first slide here is a handful of resources for employers. There's a couple of toolkits, including a Washington State specific toolkit that's got links to lots of useful topics, including kind of youth labor laws and working within those. On the bottom right corner, there's a link to Career Connect Washington sector leaders who are experts in kind of early talent workforce development in each of 10 high demand sectors in Washington State. So that link will take you to contact information and sector strategies and more. And then last is an opportunity that we're launching today on this webinar, which is an invitation to join a new Employer Insights Lab around early talent development. This is a focused, time-limited opportunity for employers to come together in 3 sessions to workshop barriers and challenges around early talent. So if you're interested, I'll drop a link in the chat. There will be a link in the follow-up email. There's also a QR code on the screen. This will be a fun opportunity for employers to work together and kind of figuring out how to get started or how to workshop challenges. So to close us out, again, a huge thank you to all of our panelists and to all of you for your interest in this really timely conversation about this high-value internship models and cultivating the next generation of talent in Washington State. Look for presentation materials and recording in a follow-up email, and please keep in touch. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon.